Hello friend, welcome back to Seed and Sparrow Homestead. If this is your first time hanging out, my name is Kelsey. Today we're going to do a little bit of a recap on the 2023 growing season here on our little homestead in South Central Pennsylvania. We live on a 1/4 acre and we're trying to do the best we can with what we have currently. When I go over our successes and our failures here, what some of our goals were, if we met those goals, what we've learned, what we've accomplished, and what we're gonna do different next year. Okay, we're down in the basement and the lighting is atrocious, so I apologize. First failure we're going to discuss is all of my alliums. Alliums are onions, leeks, garlic, shallots. I had a terrible time this year. So this is what is left of my shallot harvest. I had a very small little braid here of maybe 8 or 10. That was my shallot harvest, and you can see these two have sprouted, so that's that. And then here is what's left of my onion harvest. I had originally planted 80 onions and 30 shallots, and I got very few. Let me grab my garlic. This is the remainder of my garlic. I had planted 80 heads of garlic, and I probably got about 25 or 30. So, if you've been hanging out with me for a while, you know what happened. My garden was infested with the allium leaf miner. So, they come in and they burrow down into the leaves. They lay their eggs, and then the larvae start to burrow in through there. It's like a new thing here in PA in the last few years, and I know a lot of people around my area have also struggled with them. So they just pretty much destroyed most of my crop. Either it happened fairly early on in the plant's development and they just stopped growing. I also had a few birds that were stealing onions right out of the ground when they were small. And then some of them just ended up rotting from the inside out. So I'm an organic gardener and I won't spray anything on my garden. I have to combat this in a different way. So from my research, what I am doing next year and what I've already started to do, because I've planted my fall garlic, I planted it about a month ago, is I am going to be covering all of my allium crops from day one. As soon as a seed goes into a ground, plant start goes into the ground, they are getting covered with hoops and row cover. One other thing I'm also doing is I sprayed beneficial nematodes. Those are beneficial microbes going into the soil. It helps control the population of bad bugs. They'll eat certain larvae and eggs, stuff like that. So I have that sprayed on all of the soil, my entire yard. That sometimes takes, a year or two to really establish good colonies, to start bringing balance. So it's something that I will continually do, and hopefully over the years see less and less issues with bad bugs. And then the third thing that I'm doing is just making sure I am implementing some crop rotation, at least with the alliums, making sure I'm not planting them anywhere near those infested beds again. So hopefully next year I will see a better harvest than what I saw this year. Let's move on to a success. We need a success story. So I've got a whole bunch of potatoes down here. Big box back there. I have about another 80 pounds upstairs that are waiting to come downstairs. I have to do some more straightening here. I know we just cleaned this recently, but things can get out of control fairly quickly, especially when you're busy. So I have to adjust and make room. But this was a great success this year. Potatoes have always grown really easily for me here. I've never dealt with pest issues or disease issues. Hopefully never do, Lord willing. So I planted, I believe, 40 pounds of seed potatoes, and I did one succession. I did 2 plantings. So the first ones went in, I think, in April, harvested early July, and I got just over 200 pounds at that point. Planted 2 more beds worth and got another 62 pounds. So I ended up with 262 pounds of potatoes this year. My goal was 250, and I'm pretty confident that that will last us until next growing season. So I have some stored here. I froze some, and then I also canned up a whole bunch. So I have a few different sources of potatoes in storage. And then as these start to sprout, I'll do things like can them up again, make some like gnocchi, freeze some stuff, you know, just to make them last, make sure nothing goes bad. So as I see them sprouting or getting soft, we'll preserve them. So that was a great success this year. Next up, tomatoes. These are all my tomato products, besides a whole bunch that I freeze dried as well. So I'm not going to go into the specifics of exactly what I did with everything because I'm going to have a pantry tour coming soon, so stay tuned for that and we'll go into detail. But I do have a little handy dandy notebook here because I have approximately 30,000 tabs open in my brain at all times and I forget things because I think about too much at one time. So anywho, tomatoes. I planted 28 tomato plants this season. I did mainly paste tomatoes this year. I did 3 cherry tomato plants and then I think I had 8 slicers. From those 28 plants, I had about 450 pounds of tomatoes come in to the house. Not quite all of them I preserved. Some were eaten fresh, but then I also gave a whole bunch away to friends and family. I just made sure we had what we needed to last us through until next harvest season. So already something that I am noticing, you know, as the years go on, you just kind of refine the process and really learn how much it takes to feed your family, kind of hone in on what you really eat. So if you've been following along, you know I've had some health issues this year. Some things have been brought to my attention. I didn't know that my body was struggling to digest and was really doing me more harm than good. And one of those things is nightshades. I'm okay with potatoes, but tomatoes and peppers really don't agree with me. I don't believe that's like a lifelong sentence. There are just some things going on in my body that need some time to heal and need time away from the inflammatory foods. So for now, I'm not eating any of the nightshades, at least the tomatoes and the peppers. So for the foreseeable future, we're not going to be consuming quite as much because I'm not eating it. So next year, I'm probably going to dial back on my tomato production. I'm probably not going to do any slicers, maybe 1 plant. I'm probably not going to do any cherry tomatoes. My husband isn't a big fan of tomatoes fresh, and neither of my kids. So that's just the plan right now. We're going to see how things unfold. Perhaps things will change, but next year I'm probably only going to do maybe like 15 paste tomato plants, and I'm going to see, you know, how much production I get from those. It always depends. Depends on the year, you know, the environment, all of those unknown factors that come into play. But I think we're gonna have enough left over that I can cut back and just kind of see how much those 15 plants will give us. So anywho, I don't think I said, tomatoes were obviously a success. I had a great year for tomatoes. Beets are also awesome. I had great success there. I planted a small little 2 by 6 foot in-ground bed. I decided this year to start them indoors from seed, and I multi-sowed them. So in each little cell, I put 2 to 3 seeds, and I kept them that way. I did not thin them out, and that's how they grew outside in the garden. And from a small little 2 by 6 row, I got a lot of beets. I didn't quite keep track of exactly how many, but I'm gonna estimate 50 to 60 pounds. We ate some fresh, I gave some away, I canned some, I freeze dried some. So for beets, it was a really good year. We're gonna move right here to some squash loofah gourds. I planted 12 different varieties of pumpkins and squash and gourds this year, and honestly I didn't have a ton of success with them. A lot of that had to do with location and the fact that we had a super dry season this year, and I was not the greatest waterer. You all know that I am not a great waterer. So it is what it is. I did end up with a ton, there's a whole bunch here on the floor you can't see, of these Rompicante squash. It is not a Tromboncino, it's its own variety. So it's a hybrid where if you eat it when it's young and immature, it's still green. It's like a summer squash, like a zucchini. If you allow it to cure on the vine, turn this peachy color, then you can store it like a winter squash. And I believe from what I've read, I haven't eaten them yet, it resembles a butternut squash in flavor. We're gonna be baking with these soon, so I'll do a taste test for you guys, but I had a lot of success with that one plant. I think I got 15 of them off of it, so I sure hope I like them. And then I only got 4 butternut, and I got 3 of my, these are Georgia candy roaster squash. They are super sweet. I prefer these to a neck pumpkin, so I got those. And then I got 1 lone tiny little cheese pumpkin. So that's the entirety of my squash harvest. And then randomly, I didn't think I was gonna get any of these. These are loofah gourds. You peel the skin off and there's like a sponge inside. I'll be doing that with you guys here soon. They're starting to yellow and I can hear the crunch in there. So they're just about ready. So I still got some squash, but if you compare, you know, the ratio of plants sown to actually what I harvested, it's pretty terrible. So next year, I need to revamp some things in the garden, switch some things around. Like I said, you're always refining the process, figuring out where things grow best. We have a limited amount of space. We've got a 1/4 acre. I'm trying to use it the best I can. So we're gonna have to pivot a little bit next year. All right, you guys, the really fun, exciting harvest this year, my peanuts. This is the first year I grew them. I have 2 more trays down here sitting. So I planted 6 plants and I got 3 trays worth of peanuts. So as you guys know, if you've been following along, I didn't harvest these the right way. I had to harvest them a little bit soon because a frost was coming. At least I thought I had to do that. Apparently, it's good if you leave them in the ground for the first frost, and then you should harvest them and leave them on the plants, hang the plant up for them to dry on. I did neither of those things. I harvested them too soon, and then I took them all off of the plants, and they've just been sitting here on a screen drying, trying, you know, to have airflow all around them. And they still have another week to dry before I'm going to shell them, and we're gonna roast them and see if they turned out or if it was a total fail. So stay tuned. Another good success this year, all of my herbs. Got a whole bunch of jars here. These are all mainly freeze dried. You can see I'm running out of space. I've got some there, and I have some on this rack as well. These are old DVD racks that I repurposed. So like I said, I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on just exactly what is in everything that I preserved. But it has been a goal of mine each year to increase the amount of herbs that I'm using, both culinary and medicinal. So I think I did a pretty good job of that this year. I've got a whole bunch of things to work with for salves and soaps, for tinctures, for teas, which I'm really excited about. I've already started some of those projects with you guys. We did some infused oils, and we did some extracts. We're going to be doing some soap making and tincture making and salve making and balm making, all of the things over the winter months. I'm going to have a video coming out hopefully in the near future about all of the herbs I want to be growing here on our homestead. I'm trying to narrow down that list and just see how much access I have to those seeds, and see what is really, you know, in our minds at least, what would be good for us, necessary here on our homestead, things we'd want to have immediate access to. So stay tuned for that. We're gonna take a moment and go outside while we still have daylight, because daylight savings, and now it's total darkness by 5:30 and it's completely depressing. I'll give you a little pano of the backyard just in case this is your first time here or you joined me here after the garden season. And sorry, my tripod is not going so smoothly at the moment. So back behind me here, this is the in-ground, no-dig portion in the center, and then it's surrounded by 12 raised beds. This is where I grew the majority of the food. I have 2 other plots that I also grew food on, but that's where most of it came from. So I'm gonna take you in here, I'm gonna show you my raspberry setup, my strawberry setup, and where I grew celery, and then I also wanna show you what's going on with the blueberries and the asparagus. Here's the asparagus beds. I have 2 8x4 beds back here. You can kind of see there. So, most of the plants in there, I grew them from seed, and they were started, this will be their 3rd year. So this coming season I can actually start harvesting from them. You shouldn't harvest until they've been established for 3 years. So if you want asparagus and you're like just starting a garden, you're just starting a homestead, know that that needs to go in now. So I'm super thankful next year I actually get to harvest from that. So I think I have, 32 asparagus plants in there. So I didn't harvest anything this year. We'll see what we get next year. All right, so celery. I had 3 3x3 little plots of celery planted. In each plot I had, I believe, 9 plants. So there's still some stragglers here. It's lasted after the frost. It gets super sweet actually. So there's 1. Here's 2. There's still some little bitty ones there trying to come up. I'm still harvesting off of it. And then up there in the front garden, I had another plot, which I have torn out because we kind of redid that space a little bit. So from those 3 celery plots, I was able to preserve 8 gallons of celery, either frozen in the freezer or freeze-dried and put in Mylar bags. I'm still harvesting off of that. I'm interested to see how long that will keep going for. We've had some hard frosts. It's gotten down to 26 already, so we'll see how that goes. Let me show you what's going on with the strawberry situation. It's a bit of a disaster. So that over there is a 4x10 strawberry bed. I had 50 strawberry plants that were newly planted this year, and they have just done their thing and encroached on all of the walkways around it, and I have probably hundreds of runners on that bed. Back here in the corner I have a 4x8 bed of strawberries. This one has been here for 2 years, and it has also sprawled out. So I have those 2 bigger beds. Up here in the front garden, I have 3 2x3 beds in like an L shape here. It's kind of messy up in here, still have to clean up. And then I have, it mirrors over there, so another L shape, 3 2x3 beds. So from all of those strawberry beds, now the new one with the 50 plants I just put in this past season, I didn't get much of anything off of, a few handfuls. So next year I'm expecting a much bigger harvest. This year I got about 50 pounds preserved. I know I had more than that, but my kids love strawberries out of the garden, and I love that that is gonna be like a core memory for them, coming out to Mom's garden and helping themselves to garden snacks. They love their garden strawberries, so I'm sure I got pounds and pounds more than that, but I will never know because they're in their tummies. Okay, let's quick talk raspberries. I have this 4x8 jungle behind me. In the front garden, you can see there's a row right here, and there's a row mirroring it on that side. So I had those 3 setups for raspberries, and this year, besides all of the fresh that I have no idea how much was eaten by little ones and myself and my husband, what I actually got preserved was 15 gallons, which I'm super pleased with. So for the raspberries and the strawberries, I would say both were great successes. I can't really tell you exactly how many strawberry plants I have because they've just multiplied over the years. I started with about 40 to 50 in each bed, the bigger beds. The small ones I think had about maybe 15 or so. The raspberry canes, in the one in the in-ground garden. Well, it's in a raised bed. I started with 8 canes in there, and then there were 8 canes each on each row, which have multiplied. So I can't really give you an accurate amount of plants that I have anymore. We're up here at the front of the house, the very front garden plot. This here was an archway, trellis walkway that was a total fail this year. I wanted to grow my squash and pumpkins over these trellises. However, yeah, you can see there the base of a really big maple tree that just provided too much shade for those plants. They did not do well. The last archway, we actually moved up here, I'll show you in a second, because nothing is gonna grow over there. It's just entirely way too shaded. And these two didn't do great either. So I'm gonna switch up what I'm growing there next year and move the squash somewhere else. This plot here is where I had my Ruth Stout bed for potatoes. And I did not love Ruth Stout. I gave it a second chance in another bed, and it really did not work for me. So kind of the same thing also happened in that plot where the potatoes were. The last 2 rows that I had made just got too much shade. So I'm gonna do away with those 2 rows. I think I'm still gonna grow potatoes there next year. However, I am going to do away with Ruth Stout. I might kind of do a modified where I'm still using some straw to mulch them, but I'm gonna bury them at least 4 to 6 inches in the ground. My raised bed potatoes did fantastic. They always do for me, so I'm really gonna stick to that, but I wanna make good use of that space back there. So that's either gonna be potatoes with a modified Ruth Stout. I'm gonna hill them, make rows, plant them down 4 to 6 inches deep, and then I'm gonna mulch them over up there, because our entire property is on a slant. So all of the water naturally goes down into the no-dig area, and this stuff up here is left pretty dry. So I'm thinking the mulching should help them retain some moisture. But we'll see. It's still early. I've got a lot of dreaming to do over the colder months, and we'll see what I come up with. You can hardly see them because they're just kind of camouflaged, but here are 10, no, how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 blueberry bushes. Some of them are on their first year, some are on their 3rd year. So I did not get a blueberry harvest this year, but hopefully next year I'll actually start to see some production. Back here is my cottage garden. It's in the shape of a keyhole, so it has the keyhole design there in the center, and then it's a big semicircle. I'm kind of standing in the way of it. It's hard to get it all, honestly, on the camera. But as you can see, I've been chopping away at things. I've pulled some things out. I have some plans to kind of revamp the space next year. I really want it to be in an English cottage garden style. I do have some things for food in there. I have my apple tree, which we did get 22 apples off of this year. It was its first fruiting year. I was excited about that. It is a 5-way apple tree, so they take a rootstock and they graft 4 other varieties onto it. So it is self-pollinating, which is great for our small space. I have a whole bunch of medicinal herbs in here too. I think my plan next year is just to incorporate more perennial herbs and flowers. I have some more rose bushes coming. Surprise, surprise. I mean, I'm sure that's not a surprise. You all know how much I love roses. So I'm just gonna have fun with this space, but then I also want it, to really serve a purpose aside from beauty, because I do take a lot of joy in that. I want to put a whole bunch more medicinal herbs in this space. We're gonna shift gears really quick to animals here on our homestead. We have currently 14 chickens, 2 of which are roosters. So our goal is just to kind of be consistently bringing in new layers each year. So every spring I'll get 4 to 6 pullets, so that as they age, as the egg laying tapers off, we constantly have a supply. So this year I did get 6. However, 2 of those were roosters. Last spring I got 6, and 2 of those were roosters. They were supposed to be all pullets, and I know it's not 100% accuracy, but it's pretty close. So yeah, we haven't had much success in not getting roosters. So we got rid of 2 of the roosters. We ended up with 2 more. So we don't need 2. We're okay with 1. So we're gonna have to give the other one away somewhere. But we ran into some other issues this year with our chickens. So these 2 birds here that are separated from the flock are my prized French black copper Morans that lay the beautiful, deep, rich, chocolate colored eggs that I searched high and low for in our area. So they turned out to both be egg eaters. This is the second time we are separating them from the flock. They will lay on occasion their own eggs and not touch them. They'll let them go. But as soon as we put them back in with the other hens, they immediately go and peck open all of the other eggs. Everything we've read says there's no way to break them of it. I'm not totally sure what to do. I mean, I love animals, but if you're on our homestead, you have to serve some purpose, because we just don't have the means to just be feeding animals that aren't giving us anything, and these ones are actually taking things from us. So if you have any insight, please feel free to let me know, but to be determined what will become of them. So because of that whole egg eater debacle, it took us a while to figure out who the culprits were. So because of that, we were without eggs for a while, and we went through everything that I had stockpiled. I had a whole bunch freeze-dried, and now we're back to purchasing like locally from other homesteaders in the area, because now it's cold, the days are getting shorter, they don't lay quite so often, and they all just finished molting. So we've had 0 eggs, and I have none stored up because of that whole egg eater issue. So that's quite a bummer. Hopefully next season is a bit better with these new egg layers. The new ones haven't started laying either, so we're still waiting for that day. Okay, we came out to the garage for a quick second. I wanted to show you, this is our brooder box for our meat birds. Sorry, I have hair that keeps going in my mouth. We raise Cornish cross here for our chicken meat. I had a goal for 50 birds this year. I didn't quite meet that because a few of them did not make it from the one batch. I ordered 2 batches of 25, and we ended up with 45 that we butchered and are now in our freezers. So this is where they start, in our garage with a heat lamp, and then they get moved outside. Back there is our chicken tractor. It's big enough for 40 birds at a time. I believe it's 16 by 16, something like that. So that's where they go for about 6 weeks or so. So we did the 2 batches this year. We did 1 that we got in the spring. We butcher right around 9 weeks, 8 to 9 weeks. And then we got a second batch. Oh boy, when did we do that? I want to say we got them in like August? Late August. I'd have to go back and check my records. And we noticed a difference. So we knew we were taking a chance raising them when it was hot. They don't handle the heat very well. But they all did fine in that respect. We didn't lose any from that. We lost some early on when they were still inside. But what we noticed was, for our spring batch, we ended up with 8 to 9 pound birds when we were finished, which was awesome. For our later round of chickens, we did all the same things. We feed for 12 hours on, 12 hours off. Same food. We grew them out for the same amount of time, but for some reason we only ended up with 4 to 5 pound birds, and we actually had less birds that time around. So that was kind of bewildering. We weren't really sure what happened there, so we didn't have the best result for that second batch, which is okay. A little bit disappointing because you know, you're hoping for a certain amount of weight for all the money and, you know, resources we're putting into them, but I'm still considering it all a success. Just strange though. If you have any insight on that one, let me know about that too. We're back inside where it's nice and warm. It started getting pretty dark out there. 2 other animal things before I quick wrap up with just a few of the other food items that I don't really have anything to show at the moment. So we ended up getting our bunny. We got a Holland Lop. Her name is Rosie. And I got her for 2 reasons. One is just kind of a pet for us, but you know, when you're working with limited space, we love animals, but you have to serve a purpose here. And she provides fertilizer for my garden. She provides a lot of fertilizer. I am surprised how much she produces for just a small little bunny. But rabbit manure is a cold fertilizer, so we don't have to compost that for any length of time like you would horse or cow. Donkey, I don't remember how long you have to do that for. I believe rabbits and sheep have cold manure, or sheep you have to do for a very limited amount of time. I don't know, don't quote me on that. So it's really nice, you know, she provides the fertilizer that I can just go and dump right away onto my garden, which helps us produce more food. So we love Rosie. She's a great addition here to our homestead. And the last animal I'll mention is not one that you can see here. We have friends right down the road who have some more land. They have 3 acres and they grow. They raise their own pork. They raise pigs. And I believe it's a thing where you shouldn't only have 1 pig, you should have at least 2 together. They do better in pairs. So they grow 1 for us as well, and then we just provide them with some money to cover cost of feed, and then we help each other butcher. We're really thankful for them. It's awesome that we can have access to pastured pig right down the road from us. We know who's raising it, we know what's going into it, but we're just not able to do it ourselves. So we're very thankful for that community. Okay, I feel like this is getting super long-winded and I'm totally sorry about that. That's just typical Kelsey. I am a talker. So I'm checking off my list here, seeing what else I quick want to go over, and I'll stop talking your ear off. Let's quick talk about some more fails. So pretty big fail for me this year was carrots. I hardly got anything. Some of that was fault of my own. I didn't do what I should have done. I typically lay a board over them to help with germination. They don't do well if they dry out. And we had a really dry early spring season. So I had really poor germination. I need to do better about that next year. And then the ones that did germinate, I didn't go back and thin. So I got a really poor carrot harvest. I don't even know if I got 10 pounds, honestly. So that was a bummer. We really love carrots. I wanted to grow enough to keep in our garage fridge for over the winter. That didn't happen. It's okay. I'm gonna do better next year. Another fail would be Brussels sprouts. I kind of grew them as a fun experiment this year. Last year I tried and it was a fail. Wanted to see if it was a fluke. It wasn't. I'm just terrible at growing Brussels sprouts. I tried all of the tricks, you know, like taking the bottom leaves off, topping them to see if the the actual sprouts would form, and out of 12 plants, I got 2 cups of Brussels sprouts that weren't really even formed, you know, that great. They were pretty teeny tiny. So I think I'm just gonna do away with most of the brassicas. Like, we don't even eat broccoli or cauliflower. I didn't even try to grow those this year, but the only brassica I think I would try to grow again would be cabbage. I actually did have success with cabbage this year. It was my first year of success, and I think the difference was I covered them pretty soon after I put them into the ground, because I just struggle with cabbage worms and I don't spray them. I'm an organic gardener, so I covered them, and I ended up getting 8 heads of cabbage that I used for sauerkraut, and I freeze dried a bunch, so cabbages were a success this year. Peas were a success for the most part, I guess. I ended up with 1.5 gallons of peas that are in the freezer. I started off with 50 peas, seeds that I had planted direct sown outside. The problem I had was they didn't germinate the first time. I think I'm gonna try soaking them first next year. I think I'd done that in the past and I was just lazy this time and I just put them right into the ground. Yeah, I didn't have good germination. And then the second planting I did, they got out kind of late then, and then it got too hot for them. They didn't do well. So I could have done better, and I will make sure I do better. Next year, I also think I want to plant more than what I did. It really takes a lot of pea plants to actually get enough peas when they're shelled to put a dent into what we actually eat. So I think I'm gonna do a big long row of them next year. Now, something else, one that did terrible and another that did great would be 2 leafy greens. Kale did wonderful. I had 10 plants and I got gallons upon gallons of freeze-dried kale. That's my preferred method for preserving that. I also did some frozen kale pucks in the freezer. Kale did great. What didn't do great was spinach. I start everything from seed inside, but we just don't have a very long cool spring season here. It surprises me every year. You'd think I'd know better by now, but we just go from cool temps to hot like overnight. And then it just stays hot. And all of my spinach seedlings bolted within like a week of being outside. And I even put them out like early April, and we just had a really hot April this year. So they did not do well, obviously. I didn't get a thing from my spinach plants. And I just got too overwhelmed with things to even focus on a fall garden this year. You guys all know that. That was a miserable fail. I had no fall garden. Nothing to show for it. The stuff that I planted in those raised beds all died. I think I have a couple beets that are coming up, but everything else died. So, yeah, fall garden has never really been much of a success for me because things just get too busy. I'm still in the midst of preservation at that point, and honestly at capacity and overloaded. So maybe one year I'll have a successful fall garden, maybe not. Okay, 4 more plants. And I'll wrap this up for you. So corn, total fail. I'm never growing corn again, unless for some reason we get a whole bunch of land, but right now it's a waste of space on our small plot. I had 2 4x4 plantings that I think I had, how many did I have in each one? In a 4x4 plot, I think I had close to 30 in each one. And I did end up getting about 20 ears of corn from those 2 little plots, but I guess I didn't plant the right variety and I didn't harvest them at the right time and I didn't preserve them quickly enough. So they were terrible. I went to cook them. I was going to can them, and then I tasted them and they had 0 flavor, super bland, not sweet at all, and kind of gummy and chewy. So that was my fault. Didn't plant the right variety. I harvested them too soon, and then I waited too long to preserve them. I had them sitting in a bucket overnight, and apparently some varieties you have to like preserve immediately, and or else the sugar content starts to go down. So that was a complete and utter fail, and I just don't think it's worth my time or the space on our plot anymore. Peppers did great. That was a success. From 10 plants, I had a variety of peppers. I got 8 gallons of peppers. We don't even eat peppers that much, so I don't know if I'm growing peppers next year, but they grow great here. So that was a success. Green beans, I had 12 plants, and I also got 8 gallons from those. We also don't eat a ton of green beans. I gave a whole bunch away. I preserved a whole bunch. We're gonna slowly work our way through them. I might grow some next year just to like constantly have a supply of them, but I'm probably gonna just dial it back a whole bunch because we just don't eat that much. And then I think pretty much the last thing would be my sweet potato fail. I have a video on that. I need to figure that out. I think I'm gonna do some like containers this year to try growing them in. I think the 2 beds I had them in, they were newer beds with newer soil. They're still pretty well compacted, not loose enough. and I don't think it was sunny enough in that location. So I planted 32 slips and I got 28 pounds of sweet potatoes. And because the ground was too compacted there, I snapped all but 12 of those 28 pounds. And I'm 12 actual potatoes. So that might have been like, I don't know, a sixth of them. I snapped them all, so I didn't even get to cure the ones that I snapped. They still tasted fine, quite honestly. They were still pretty sweet, and I just ended up preserving them. I made some gnocchi and some other baked goods and stuff and put them in the freezer. But that was a fail, which is pretty depressing because I love sweet potatoes. I was hoping, like, my goal was like 75 pounds, and that didn't happen, and I have nothing to show for it now because I ate the ones that I did have. So I need to figure out what to do about sweet potatoes next year. I did grow a whole bunch of flowers, which I consider a success. I had weekly new bouquets coming in here. That's all I really wanted. I wanted flowers outside for the pollinators, some beauty in the garden, some beauty to bring inside. So my goal next year is just to do some more perennials, not start so many from seed, really hone in on the varieties I love rather than just having a ton of just different kinds. There are certain ones I seem to gravitate towards, so I just want to focus in on those. Something I struggle with and that I want to get better about next year is not succumbing to FOMO. And if you don't know what FOMO stands for, that's fear of missing out, which I am hugely guilty of. You know, I'll just see something and be like, oh, that's so pretty, or that looks so aesthetically pleasing, even though we don't eat it. Or, oh, they're growing it, now I want to grow it. But we don't enjoy it, we don't eat it, and it just takes up space. So I'm gonna try and be better about that. It's hard. I love growing all the things, but when you have limited space to work with, you have to be wise about it. You have to be resourceful. You have to constantly refine what you're doing so that you get the most out of your space. So I'm gonna try and say no to FOMO next season. So all in all, I think I had a fairly successful garden. I grew a ton of food, probably close to like 1,000 pounds of food all in all, which is really amazing. It really helps supplement our grocery bill. I've got a nice stocked pantry, which I'm going to share with you all very soon. I've revamped some of that space since my last tour. And you know, this year was my first full year, like full-time year on YouTube, doing all of these things besides that. I greatly underestimated how much work that was going to be, and I think some of my failures, you know, just kind of happened because I had a lot on my plate that I wasn't totally prepared for. And you know, now I'm really considering this like it's a small business. It takes a lot to start up. It takes a lot of hard work, a lot of, you know, late nights editing or filming. I'm doing it with 2 small children, and there's a lot of starting and stopping. There's a lot of interruptions. So, you know, YouTube has been great. It's been great for our family. I'm still trying to figure it all out, how to do, you know, as much as I can. You can't do it all, so I'm still trying to figure that out. But that definitely played a role in some of my failures because I was just at capacity. I had all of these, you know, goals for a fall garden, and I just couldn't get to any of it because I couldn't do one more thing. So I'm pretty proud of myself, honestly, for how much I did accomplish, for the most part on my own. My husband works 60 hours a week. My parents are an hour away, and I can't just easily go and drop off the kids. I try and include my kids in all that I'm doing, but it's a lot having 2 small ones, having basically my own business and running a household, preserving things, making the food from scratch, you know, just like the typical things at home. It is a lot, but I've learned a lot. I'm hoping to apply a lot of what I've learned next year and always refine. Alright, so now I'll finally wrap up this video. I hope you enjoyed coming along with me this whole last season. It's so fun to look back over everything and to bring you all along for it. We did a whole lot of growing and preserving and learning. And we've got lots more of it to do. A new season is coming and I'm really excited about it. If you have any questions about anything that I covered in this video, or perhaps I overlooked and I didn't get to, just go ahead and drop it down in the comments and I will do my best to get back to you. But other than that, you guys, lots of fun stuff coming, and I thank you all so much for coming along with me. I appreciate you all so much. You bless our family all the time by just clicking on these videos and liking and sharing and commenting. I appreciate you all so much. You all have a blessed day, and I'll see you next time. Take care.